Hi everyone, my name's Alexia from the Student Money Service, and I'm joined online today by Claire Clark from the Student Union at UWE. Now, Claire manages the Advice Centre at the Students' Union, and she and her team provide information on different matters of advice, but today we're going to be talking about accommodation and the things you might need to know in the search for accommodation. So I'm going to ask Claire some questions and she's going to provide you all with some knowledge. So the first question, so Claire, what things should students consider when starting the housing search?
So I'd say the first thing to consider is that you need to do your research. So it's important that you understand the different areas of Bristol, what sort of accommodation you're looking for, whether you're looking for a house or a flat, whether you want local amenities close by on a bus route or close to campus. So all those sort of things will have an important bearing on when you start your accommodation search. And it's also really important to factor in your budget, so how much you can afford. So don't be tempted to look at accommodation that maybe is based on your friend's budget. So it's about your budget, your income and expenditure, and that will help you to filter the different types of accommodation based on what you can afford from a rent and bills point of view.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's lots of information to take in. We'll go into some of that a bit more in a minute. The next question is, what advice would you give students about finding housing? So when they're starting off.
Yeah, so there are lots of tips that we can give to students who are starting that process for the first time, especially if you've been living in halls. So moving out into the private sector is obviously something that can be a little bit overwhelming for you. So the Advice Centre have teamed up with StudentPad. So StudentPad is an online accommodation platform. So that will be a good place to start your search. And in the Advice Centre, we also have a list of agencies in Bristol. So a little bit like an A to Z of different agencies. So anyone who needs some help with not knowing where to start their search, then they'll be able to contact us in the Advice Centre and we can then provide them with that agency list. We also have the Find a Flatmate group on Facebook. So that's a really good place to start if you're not quite sure who you're going to be living with yet, and you could maybe join up with other people who are in a similar position, and then you can think about house hunting together.
Wow, that's a lot of information. Thank you. It sounds like there's lots of resources there for students. I particularly like the Find a Flatmate group idea on Facebook. So hopefully that will help students. Obviously, a big question is regarding deposits. What do students need to know about deposits? Because this is an amount of money that they might need to save up or access from somewhere, maybe with parental help, etc.
Yeah, so with regards to a deposit, when you're first starting your accommodation search and when you start seeing properties that you might be interested in, the agencies will want you to pay normally some rent in advance like secure the accommodation for you. And then you could be required to pay a deposit as well. So, realistically, you might be looking at paying £1,000 before you've even moved into the property. So that's really important to factor that in as well. And then the deposit, once you've paid that, if you sign an assured short hold tenancy, which most contracts are that we see for students, then your deposit has to be protected in one of the government-backed tenancy deposit schemes. So that's really important for you because it means that the landlord will have to go through certain steps to make sure that he is keeping your deposit in a genuine way at the end of the tenancy. So the deposit will then be used to cover any rent that you haven't paid, any bills that you haven't paid, or even if there's any damage in the property that you've caused, the deposit can be kept for all of those reasons. So it's important once you move into a property, as long as you keep up to date with your rent, keep on top of the bills and don't cause any damage, then you should get your deposit back at the end. But if you have any problems once you move out of your tenancy, then we'll be able to help you with that when the time comes.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, that's really important, and it's good to know a figure roughly of £1,000. I've heard there's lots of scams that target students and accommodation. So what advice do you have about that? What do students need to know?
So yeah, unfortunately, we do hear of students being scammed, and mainly this is because they're not looking in the right places. So when I mentioned before about UWE StudentPad and the agency list that we can provide you with from the Advice Centre, so they're two really important places that you can look that will hopefully avoid any scams, because sometimes we find that students, when they're looking for a room and they're looking randomly online, we're hearing that students are then saying that property doesn't exist and they've paid a lot of money up front. So it's really important to look in the right places as a starting point. And also then if people start asking money and you haven't seen the property, you haven't been sent any images and things like that, they're not happy to send you a contract. And if anyone seems just really reluctant about giving you information, then you can come to us in the advice centre and we'll do our best to try and help you, work out if that property is genuine or not. But generally you'll be less at risk if you look for property in the right places like Student Pad and via our agencies.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's the standard advice is of if it seems too good to be true, then it probably is. And if in doubt, then come and seek advice from Claire and her team.
Definitely.
And they'll talk you through whatever you need to know. And what advice do students need to know about contracts?
It's obviously really important when you're signing a contract that it is a legally binding document. So when I was saying at the beginning about doing your research and finding the property that's right for you, because as soon as you sign that contract, you are then entering into that arrangement with the landlord or agency. So it's important that you make sure that the contract you're signing is what you want to be committing to for the next, 9, 12 months of the academic year. So you need to be given time to read through the contract. So again, a way of getting scammed is if someone's putting pressure on you to read the contract before, before you really have that time. In the advice centre, we can check contracts through before you sign them. So you can just get in contact with us and we'll help you understand the different terms and conditions, different language that might be used to help you understand what it is you're signing up for. But you should be given the opportunity to sign it. And if something doesn't seem right in the contract, then the best thing to do is take that back to the agency or landlord and ask for clarification on a particular term or condition. Because once you've signed it, then the landlord or agency say, well, you've signed it, so we can hold you to a particular clause. So yes, it's really important that you do your research and only sign and only pay any money when you're 100% happy.
So yeah, it's a legal document. There might be terminology in there that you don't recognise as a student. And get clarification over anything you don't understand is really, really important. And am I right in thinking that most contracts might be short hold tenancies?
Yes, yeah. So the majority of contracts we see for students are assured short hold, and they actually are the most popular form of tenancy agreement anyway. But definitely the ones that we see that students sign. So that's good because there are obviously certain terms and conditions that form part of an assured short hold tenancy. Not least what I was saying before about deposits. So your deposit has to be protected in a scheme if you sign an assured short hold tenancy. Now, some people might try and say it's an assured short hold tenancy, but when we talk to you about your accommodation situation, it turns out that it's not an assured short hold. So, things like that are ways that landlords and agencies may try to scam you as well. So anything like that doesn't seem quite right, then we'll be able to help you sort of unpick what exactly it is that you're signing based on the accommodation that you're going to be living in.
Yeah, okay, so it's about knowing your rights based on the contract and also, I guess, your responsibilities as a tenant.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So if you have any queries about that, then check with the agent or the landlord, or come and see the advice centre. And I believe also the Citizens Advice Bureau is also helpful as well if you have queries. So that might be another potential source of help. What is a realistic budget for a room in a shared house when looking for accommodation?
So I would suggest that you anticipate spending at least £500 a month. That's likely to just be your rent, so you will have to factor in bills on top of that. And bills, you could be looking at about another £100 a month as your contribution between things like gas, electricity, the internet, so things like that that you would be expected to pay, within your property.
Thank you. So you covered my next question about bills. So that looks like it's around £600 as perhaps a minimum or an average for rent and the utility bills and things like insurance and maybe TV license as well. I guess the important thing is for students to remember that that's just like the first chunk of their budget, and they need to think of things such as food, travel, course costs, other things they might need, clothes, household things and toiletries, etc. So all these things need to be thought about. Do you have any other ideas about that?
I think it's just, you obviously need to, when you're doing your accommodation research, you need to sort of, factor in how much you can afford to spend, like I mentioned before. And as you've said, it is also a case of factoring in things like food and, going out and getting to campus and, things like that. Students do need to get a part-time job these days. The Students' Union does have a job shop, which advertises sort of student-friendly jobs. So your employer then won't be putting pressure on you to work additional hours. You can obviously work more in the holidays and things like that, but realistically for a student, you shouldn't be working any more than 20 hours per week. But I would say that you are going to need to get a part-time work to help supplement your student finance or wherever it is your money is coming from.
Yeah, great advice. So the important thing is to do your budget and keep adapting it, because budgets change and things happen. I believe that Save the Student, the website, has a rent calculator on there where you can tap in your figures and things, and there's various budgeting tools out there as well. So we might talk about that a bit more in a moment. Yeah, so the next question is how to manage bills and a joint budget with housemates.
Yeah, so there are different ways you can do this. I mean, sometimes we know that students, maybe there are 4 of you in a house, so you each take responsibility for one particular bill. So maybe one of you does a TV license, one of you does the gas, one of you does the electricity, one of you maybe does the insurance. So that could be one way of doing it. You could set up a joint account, so you each pay a certain amount of money into that, and then one person takes the responsibility of paying their bills every month. So that's sort of another way you can do it. The best thing to do is have that conversation when you first move into your property and see what the best way is that works for you. There are companies as well that can help you with that. You'll need to pay a fee, but it takes the hassle out of you doing it, and then it means you're only then responsible for your share. So that might be something that you want to consider. So yes, there is a fee, but it's sort of weighing up the the hassle of you doing it individually. So there are different options, and the important thing is to get on top of it from the beginning, so then you don't get any arguments a bit further down the line about who owes what and things like that. So have that conversation with your housemates when you move in about the best way that will work for you, within your house.
Okay. Yeah, good advice. I think something we'd like to emphasize is to put all names on joint bills, so no one person is liable. And also, if you do consider a sort of joint bank account with your housemates, then make sure everyone's reliable, because that could affect everyone's credit rating if someone doesn't pay their share, and the bank balance obviously goes into the negative. So yeah, make sure you're all set up and you all know what you're doing and paying your part. I've also heard that I don't know if you know much about these, Claire, but there's a couple of free budgeting apps where you can sort of split the bills and things. Splitwise.com. I might put the names in the comments here, and Split2, like TOO.com. And I've heard that they're free budgeting apps, and that helps you like manage the bills between housemates and things. So that might be something to consider. Yeah. So moving on to the next question, who might need a guarantor? What is the process? What do they need to know about that?
Yeah, so this is a really big question that we get asked. It used to be that it was more popular a question for international students, but we're finding a lot more landlords and agencies are asking home students as well. So a guarantor is basically a person who will guarantee your rent if you default on your rent. Often they have to be a UK-based person. They maybe have to be a homeowner, and they have to be earning over a certain amount of money. So for a lot of international students, they don't have a UK-based person. So there are some companies that we know that can act as a guarantor for you. Again, you'll have to pay a fee for this, but it means if you haven't got anybody in the UK, or you haven't got anybody who fulfills the requirement, like I said, they have to be a homeowner and earning a certain amount of money as well. So if you haven't got that person, you can ask. Then you can consider contacting these companies and see what they can do for you. So this will be, somebody who will say, yes, I will pay if you don't pay your rent, if you don't pay your bills and things like that. So it's important that that person understands what being a guarantor means, because obviously it's a financial requirement on them as well. But it's a perfectly normal thing that you're being asked for. So don't be worried if the agency says, oh, we need a guarantor for you. It's just you need to think individually whether you have the the right person that fulfills the criteria. And if you don't, then sometimes you maybe have to pay rent in advance, so a lot more rent up front, which obviously for some students can be quite a difficult financial burden on them. So lots of options. It's just working out what will be best for you. So do come and seek advice about guarantors if you if you do have any questions about that.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. So you've got companies and things, lists of names of companies that could potentially help if they don't have anyone. Brilliant. So yeah, I think the last question is just where can students find more information and resources? I think we've covered some of that. You guys are here to help.
Yeah, basically. So we have a team in the advice centre. We provide advice at Glenside and Bower Ashton as well. So you don't always have to be up at Frenchay. You can contact us by phone and email, and we'll basically be here to help you through any step of the accommodation process. So from looking from understanding where to look in the first place, from looking at tenancy agreements before you sign them, understanding what your rights and responsibilities, and even once you're in your accommodation as well, if you have problems with damage or disrepair or things like that, or you're not quite sure if the landlord's doing something right, then you can contact us straight up to when you move out as well and you're thinking about getting your deposit back. So all of those accommodation related questions, then come and see us in the advice centre.
Yeah, and we're also here at the Student Money Service here at UWE. Our webpage is www.uwe.ac.uk/SMS, short for Student Money Service. So yeah, just the UWE website /SMS, and we're here for money related queries, but obviously Claire and her team are the experts on accommodation related queries. So I think we've covered the main things. I'm sure there's always going to be other things that students might need to know, but that's when they can come and seek help and advice. Yeah, hopefully we've covered most of it though. So thank you for your time, Claire. And yeah, if you have any queries, contact us. We're here for you. Okay, thank you.